In the heart of southeastern Nigeria, nestled between red-soiled hills and whispering palm trees, was a village called Umokwe. Life in Umokwe was simple. Roosters crowed before dawn, women went to the stream balancing silver pots on their heads, and children chased goats under the sun. But even in this village where time moved gently, everyone knew one thing without question. Amara Nwakego was the most beautiful girl to ever be born in Umokwe. Her name, Nwakego, child more valuable than money, seemed to shape her very destiny. She was tall, with the rich brown skin of ripe dates, eyes wide like river stones, and a smile that made even grumpy elders chuckle like schoolboys. When Amara smiled, the air shimmered. When she laughed, birds quieted to listen. But beauty alone wasn't what made her special. Amara's kindness was rare. Even in a village full of good-hearted people, she helped aging widows sweep their compounds without being asked. She calmed crying children with stories whispered under mango trees. And when the yam harvest was bountiful, she was the first to share with families who had none. The elders often said she was a reincarnation of Neka, the goddess of mercy and the river. So when the news came that Amara was to marry Obina Udeze, the wealthy, handsome merchant from the neighboring village of Umweze, celebration roared through Umokwe like wildfire. Obina wasn't just any man, he was tall, intelligent, and ran a thriving palm oil business that reached even the ports of Port Harcourt. He was the dream suitor, respected, well-spoken, and blessed with a gentle spirit. The union of Amara and Obina was seen as not just a marriage, but a merging of light with light. The announcement was made during the village moon festival. Drummers beat their drums with extra energy that night. Palm wine flowed in calabashes. The elders nodded their approval, while young girls whispered in envy and awe. Amara, adorned in bright yellow aso oke, glowed with quiet happiness. She had never been with a man before Obina. He was her first kiss, her first love, her first everything. But not everyone in the crowd that night clapped with pure hands. Among the dancers was Adore, Amara's cousin, daughter of Mama Nena's late brother. Adore had grown up in the same compound as Amara, but always in her shadow. While Amara was praised for her beauty, Adore was forgotten in the corners. While Amara had suitors, Adore watched from behind the curtain. And what the village never knew was that before Obina saw Amara at the market that day, he had met Adore first. They had exchanged glances, a few smiles, a few stolen words, nothing serious, but enough for Adore to hold on to hope. When Obina chose Amara instead, something inside Adore hardened. The months that followed were a blur of excitement. The wedding would be a 3-day celebration. Day 1, introduction and wine carrying. Day 2, traditional rites. Day 3, grand feast and dancing. The elders said it would be the biggest wedding Umukwe had seen in 50 years. Tailors from Auka came to sew special lace wrappers. Goats were fattened. Kegs of palm wine were stacked like towers in the compound. Even the trees seemed to sway with more rhythm, preparing for the music to come. Amara, though nervous, was deeply in love. Obina visited every market day, bringing her little gifts, a bracelet carved from ivory, a basket of ripe udara, love letters scented with otangele. Each time he left, Amara would sit under the orange tree in the family compound, pressing the letters to her chest. Her mother, Mama Nena, was the happiest of all. "I always told your father that you were born for greatness," she said. "Now look, Obina's family is even preparing to build you a house in Umweze." The entire village joined in the wedding preparations. Children rehearsed the dances. Old women practiced songs of blessing. Young men built a stage in the village square for the celebration. But Adore watched it all with a clenched jaw and tired eyes. At night, she would sit alone by the fire, whispering things to herself. One evening, her friend Onyinye caught her grinding bitter herbs in secret. "What are you doing with those things?" Onyinye asked. Adore hid them quickly. "They are for a headache," she replied. Leave me alone." But the bitterness wasn't just from herbs. It was from the inside. The dream by the river. A week before the wedding, Amara had a dream. In it, she was walking alone along the riverbank in a white wrapper. The sky was purple, the wind still. Suddenly the water rippled, and from its depths rose a one-eyed woman, her skin glowing like wet stone, her head wrapped in blue cloth. The woman looked directly at her and said, "Well, what you love most will fall, but it will rise again, stronger." Then the woman disappeared into the water, and Amara awoke with a start. She sat upright, sweat dripping down her back. The air in the hut was cold despite the heat of the night. She told no one about the dream, not her mother, not Ikena, not even Obina when he came to visit 2 days later. "I think the stress is getting to me," she whispered to herself, but the dream haunted her. She returned to the river the next morning and dipped her feet into the water. "Protect me," she whispered. "Bless this wedding. Keep envy far away." The river gurgled softly. She took it as a sign of peace. Little did she know, the river had tried to warn her. The sun rose slowly over Umokwe. The air was festive. Drums were already sounding. The bride's hut was filled with women decorating Amara. Her body was rubbed with nzu and scented oils. Her hair was braided in intricate coils and crowned with coral beads. Her white lace blouse sparkled. Her waist wrapper shimmered with gold. She was, without exaggeration, a goddess. Women ululated. Little girls danced. Mama Nena cried and kissed her cheeks. "You are the joy of my life," she said. Amara looked in the mirror one last time. She smiled, but something in her chest felt hollow. She shook the feeling off. The villagers gathered at the square. Obina's family was expected any minute, along with the convoy of guests from Umueze. The goats had been slaughtered, rice steamed in large pots. The local DJ tested the speakers. The masqueraders stood ready at the edge of the field. It was perfect. But then, a murmur, then a shout, then silence. A man came running into the square, panting heavily. He was from Umueze. Everyone gathered around him. He shouted, "Oh, Obina is not coming." Gasps erupted. People clutched their heads. The drummer stopped playing. "What do you mean he's not coming?" Mama Nena demanded. The man dropped to his knees. "He sent me. He says he's sorry. He said he cannot go through with it. The wedding is cancelled." Mama Nena collapsed. Someone caught her. Children started crying. Elders looked around in confusion. Women cursed loudly. And inside the bridal hut, Amara sat completely still, staring at herself in the mirror. Not a tear fell. Not yet. She simply whispered, "So the river was right." By nightfall, the celebration had turned into mourning. The food was packed away. The stage was empty. The guests returned to their homes in silence. Obina didn't send any further explanation. No note, no message, nothing. Mama Nena cried for hours, wailing into the wind. "What kind of shame is this? My daughter, my daughter." But Amara never cried. She went into her room, lay down on her mat and stared at the ceiling. Ikena brought her food. She didn't touch it. The villagers tried to visit. She refused them. And then at midnight, barefoot and silent, Amara rose from her mat and walked toward the river with a clay pot in her hands. Midnight in Umokwe was not like midnight in the cities. There were no lights, no engines, no crowds, only the moon and the sound of insects chirping like secret drummers in the grass. That night, the moon hung low and heavy, like a gourd filled with secrets. Amara moved quietly along the narrow path to the river, the clay pot steady in her hands. She wore no wrapper, no jewelry, no slippers, just her simple white nightcloth, soaked at the hem with morning dew. The village slept behind her, but her heart pulsed awake with pain and confusion. When she reached the bank, she knelt beside the river and whispered a prayer her grandmother once taught her. "If I carry peace, give me peace. If I carry pain, take it from me. But if I carry what I do not know, then show me what I carry." She scooped water from the river into the pot. It swelled with moonlight. She added 3 drops of palm oil, as she had seen her grandmother do during cleansing rites, and a few strands of her own hair. And then she cried. Her shoulders trembled, her chest shook, and for the first time since the shame of the wedding, Amara let the tears come freely. They fell into the river, mixing with the sacred elements in the pot. Her breath became a chant without words. Suddenly the river bubbled. The water shimmered, then parted. From its center rose a tall, graceful woman with skin like wet ash, a single eye in the center of her forehead glowing like an ember. Her wrapper was made of woven reeds and cowries circled her wrists and ankles. Amara froze. The woman raised one hand. "You called me child of earth," she said. "Do you know who I am?" Amara swallowed, then bowed her head. I dreamed of you. Yes, said the figure. I am Magi, guardian of the river spirit and voice of the deep. You dreamed of me because I chose to speak to you. Now you stand before me not as a bride, but as one who has been betrayed. Amara's voice was dry. He left me without a word. The wedding was ready. My people shamed. My name stained. I don't understand. I don't know what I did wrong. Magi stepped closer, her foot leaving no ripples. You did nothing wrong, child, but your happiness was not broken by chance. It was stolen. Poisoned. Amara's head snapped up. What do you mean? There is a curse upon you, tied to your marriage. A hand close to your own brought it. Adore, Amara whispered before she could stop herself. It's her, isn't it? Magi's one eye flickered. The heart knows its enemies, even when the face smiles. Yes, your cousin Adar offered blood and bitter root to Ajoani, the Dibia of Umunachi. She asked that your union be severed, that Obina would forget you, that shame would find your name. Amara's mouth parted, but no sound came out. She pressed a fist to her chest. Why? She finally whispered. Why would she do this to me? She believes Obina should have been hers, said Magi, but envy is the daughter of darkness. She fed it until it consumed her. And the charm worked because Obina was weak in spirit. He carried no protection. He was easy to twist. Tears burned Amara's eyes. So it was never real? The love was real, but love without spirit is like a drum without skin. It cannot speak. Amara looked into the pot she had filled. The water no longer reflected her face. Instead, it showed a memory. Adar kneeling before a Dibia's fire, dropping a goat's blood onto a string of hair that looked just like Amara's. She clenched her jaw. So what do I do now? How do I break it? Magi lifted a calabash and placed it in Amara's hands. It was black with carvings of waves and eyes. You must bring Adore to this river. Under the full moon she must confess her crime with her mouth. No force, no trick. Her words must be true and freely given. Only then will the charm break, and your path be cleansed. And if she refuses? Amara asked. Magi's voice was quiet. Then her own shadow will eat her soul. The river stilled. Magi faded back into the water. The trees bowed gently as if acknowledging something sacred had passed. Amara stood calabash in hand and walked back to the village with a new fire in her belly. She was not broken. She had work to do. For the next few days Amara remained quiet, but her silence had sharpened. She walked through the compound like a hawk scanning the ground for movement. She began to notice what she hadn't before. The old maid Ugochi, who cleaned her room during wedding preparations, mentioned a strange smell she once noticed, burnt herbs and ash. Amara nodded but said nothing. The tailor's apprentice Ejike recalled seeing Adore sneaking out at night 2 weeks before the wedding. She said she was going to check on something for the cake. He shrugged. Amara kept listening. She visited the local herb woman Mama Ifeoma under the pretense of asking for sleeping tea. As they chatted, Mama Ifeoma mentioned a young woman buying bitter root and black charcoal, ingredients often used in binding charms. What did she look like? Amara asked carefully. The woman shrugged. Thin, tall, wore a green scarf. She paid with a new N500 note. Amara's blood chilled. Adore had just bought a green scarf 2 market days ago. The evidence built in her mind like a stack of stones. But she said nothing to her mother or Ikena. She knew that if this was to end, it had to end at the river, with confession. That evening, Amara found Adore sweeping the compound. Her face looked tired, her eyes dull. She had tried to avoid Amara since the wedding collapse, staying out of her way, doing chores before dawn, and pretending not to hear when people whispered. Amara approached her calmly. I'm going to the river tomorrow night, she said. Magi spoke to me. You should come with me. She has something to tell us. Adore froze mid-sweep. Why would I go to the river with you? Amara tilted her head. Because I think you want peace just as much as I do. Adore's hands trembled slightly, but she nodded. Fine, tomorrow night. They said no more. The full moon was a heavy coin in the sky. The river glowed like silver soup. Amara arrived first, dressed in white. She held the calabash in both hands. Her heart thudded like a talking drum. Adore arrived minutes later, wrapped in a dull brown wrapper, eyes darting like a hunted animal. You brought me here to shame me, haven't you? She said. No, Amara replied softly. I brought you here to free us both. The river bubbled. Margie rose, taller this time, her one eye blazing like a lantern. Adara, she said in a voice that echoed the wind. Daughter of Umokwe, do you confess what you have done? Adora stepped back. I don't know what this is. What kind of evil? Adore, Amara interrupted gently. Please. The wind howled. Adora sank to her knees. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean to destroy everything. I only wanted a chance. Just one chance to feel like I was more than the girl standing next to you. Margie's voice was calm but thunderous. Say what you did. I went to Ajoani, Adore sobbed. I asked him to confuse Obina. I gave him Amara's hair. I asked for the wedding to collapse. I'm sorry. I didn't know it would go so far. I didn't know. The river flared. The calabash in Amara's hands began to glow. Then with a soft crack, it broke in two. A warm wind circled Amara, lifting her hair, caressing her skin. She felt lighter, like something had been cut loose from her chest. Margie smiled at her. It is done. The river stilled. The night grew quiet again. Margie turned to Adore. You have spoken truth. Your path now lies in your hands. She vanished. Adore crawled into herself, crying silently. Amara stood, wiped her eyes, and walked away. Word of the confession spread the next day. The elders held an emergency meeting. Though some called for Adore to be exiled, Amara spoke on her behalf. She has done wrong, she said, but she has also suffered. Let her stay, but let her know that envy is its own punishment. Adore was removed from the family compound and sent to live with distant relatives. She would later marry a quiet farmer and live a life of silence. Obina returned 2 weeks later, confused and ashamed. I don't know what came over me, he said. I feel like I've woken from a dream. Please forgive me. Amara looked at him and felt nothing. You were not strong enough to love me, she said. That is not my fault. I forgive you, but I no longer belong to you. He left without a word. And Amara, she began to change. She visited Margie every new moon, learning the ways of water, spirit, and truth. Her wisdom grew. Her smile returned, but it was no longer golden with innocence. It was sharp with power. The rains came early that year. The sky wore a crown of grey clouds, and the earth swallowed water like a thirsty elder. Umokwe shimmered under the storm's tears, but for Amara it was not a season of sorrow. It was rebirth. Since the night at the river, everything had changed. The villagers looked at her differently, not with pity but with respect. No one gossiped about her anymore. The whispers that used to snake behind her back, that poor girl whose wedding failed, had died. Now people said things like, Amara speaks to the river. The spirit Margie visits her in dreams. She walks with knowledge. And they were right. Amara had become something more than the heartbroken bride. She became a bridge between the village and the unseen, the wounded and the healer. She still wore her beads and still swept the compound, but people came to her now for advice, for wisdom, for blessings. And though her smile returned, it was no longer the bright smile of a girl in love. It was quieter, wiser, like the smile of a woman who has touched fire and learned to hold it without burning. Still, one thing remained unfinished. The calabash had broken. The curse had lifted, but Margie's final words still echoed. You were never meant to marry Obina. You are destined to lead. One morning, as the air was thick with the smell of rain, Amara was preparing yam porridge when a group of 5 elders came to her compound. Chief Nosu, the oldest man in Umokwe, cleared his throat. Nwani Oma, the council has spoken. We need a spiritual guide, someone who understands both the living and the spirits. The gods have turned their faces toward you. Amara blinked. You want me? Another elder nodded. We've not had a spiritual advisor since the death of old Mama Ihoma. The signs are clear. The river spirit chose you. You carry both knowledge and pain, and those who carry pain without bitterness carry wisdom. Mama Nena cried tears of joy. I always knew you were born for something greater. Amara hesitated only briefly. Then she nodded. If the river allows, I will serve. Amara began spending more time at the river. Under the guidance of Margie, she learned the language of water. how to read reflections, how to offer herbs, how to listen not with ears, but with skin, bones, and breath. She learned how to summon visions, interpret dreams, and cleanse those carrying unseen burdens. People began arriving from neighboring villages to sit with her under the orange tree and speak their sorrows. She did not take money, only kola, cowries, or yams. She did not speak often, but when she did, people listened. Children followed her like ducklings. The sick brought her their wrists to feel their pulse. Mothers whispered her name when their babies cried at night. She never boasted, never claimed power, but power followed her. And though she often passed Obina in the market, now quiet, tired, his eyes sunken with guilt, she never once stopped to speak. He was no longer her beginning or her end. Nearly a year passed since the wedding that never happened. One hot afternoon, as Amara was tending to her garden, she saw a figure walking toward her compound from the edge of the bush path. It was Adore. She was thin, her wrapper dusty, and her eyes filled with a strange kind of silence, one that comes from months of shame and quiet labor. She knelt before Amara and touched her forehead to the ground. "I do not come for mercy," she said. "I only come to say thank you for not destroying me when you could have. I married a man who doesn't speak much. We till the land. I sweep, I fetch water, I stay silent. I see now the kind of woman you are. What I tried to steal would have drowned me." Amara looked at her cousin, saw the cracks in her pride, the healing in her humility. "I forgave you long ago," Amara said, "but now I release you completely." Adore nodded, stood up, and walked away. She never returned again. On the eve of the next full moon, Magi appeared again, this time in broad daylight, a rare event. She rose from the river while Amara stood alone at the bank, her white wrapper pressed against her legs by the wind. "You have fulfilled your task," Magi said, "but a new one rises." Amara bowed her head. "I am ready." "There will come a day," said Magi, "when a bride will cry by this river just as you did, but she will not have your strength. When that time comes, your voice will save her, just as yours was saved." Amara understood. Her journey had not ended. She had simply become the next guardian in the long chain of women the river chose. Magi handed her a new calabash, this one gold and blue, shaped like a pregnant belly. "Use this only when all other paths are closed." Then she vanished once more. The following moon cycle brought the annual river festival, a celebration of fertility, harvest, and gratitude. For the first time in its history, the festival was not led by a male chief or an elder priestess. It was led by Amara Nwakaego. She wore a flowing gown of white and indigo, her hair wrapped in coils, her arms beaded with charms. She stood beside the river, holding a torch in one hand and a new calabash in the other. Villagers gathered in silence, in awe. She stepped into the water, raised the calabash, and poured libations. Then she spoke. "I once stood here, heartbroken, dreams scattered. I was not chosen that day, but the Spirit had already chosen me. So to every girl who has been left behind, to every woman whose joy was stolen, to every soul who was told they are not enough, I say, you are more than enough. What leaves you may leave you broken, but what is coming will leave you whole." The crowd erupted in cheers. Women ululated, children danced, the drums thundered, and somewhere, beyond the clouds, the river smiled. Years passed. Amara never married. Suitors came and went, but she remained devoted to her work, her people, and her spirit. She adopted 2 orphaned girls and raised them like her own. They became her assistants, her joy, her legacy. People from all over came to hear the story of the wedding that never happened, and every year on the night of the full moon, Amara sat by the river and told it, her voice soft but firm, her eyes full of memory. And she always ended with the same words. "They said my wedding didn't happen, but they were wrong. That night I married myself. I married strength. I married truth. I married the river." The end.